I am now recording, and so I'm going to attempt to make all of these available on the same page as where the list of trainings are. And so hopefully we'll have sort of a series of the training sessions available. Okay, so that's that. We've started the recording, and want to let everybody know, if you haven't already seen it, hopefully you've all found it, is the chat window. If you have questions that you'd like to ask and you either don't have audio or would prefer not to use your audio, feel free to type the question into this chat window. And we have a couple of other people online with me here, Tanya Mitchell and Pam Clark, who both work with me, and they'll be monitoring the chat window and responding to you either by chat if it's a simple question answer, or they'll bring that up with me and let me know that I should take a look at it. So as I said, I've got myself here, Tanya, and Pam. Another thing to know is that if you need to reach us specifically for something that's related directly to you, your agency, that you don't feel is something that everybody else needs to be involved with, this is our homepage, pdmagic.com. And if you head down here to contact us, there's a number of ways to reach us, all in this gray box up here. You can address to any one of us by clicking on these for emails. You can send a general support email, and you can use the browser to send an email. You've also got our phone number to reach us if you'd like to contact us by voice. So that's a good resource to have just if you want to reach out to us directly. For those of you that perhaps received an email and haven't seen the list, or were invited personally and haven't seen the list of trainings, again, from our homepage at pdmagic.com, we have our mini trainings information over here. And so I'm going to click on that just to show you what's there. This is a list of the trainings that we'll be holding and that we've already held. So we've already had a few of these. We did these last year as well, a year ago, and then kind of dropped them for a while, but had a lot of people asking about them, and we've had 15, 20 people at each session for the last 4 sessions. So we're enjoying it. I'm enjoying it. So these are the 4 we've had, and as you'll see, basically at the beginning of each month, the first Wednesday and Thursday is when we'll be holding them. And the first Wednesday will always be a beginner training, and the first Thursday will be I don't want to say advanced, but it'll be a topic specific. So we talk about diagrams, or we'll talk about administration, importing data, stuff like that. Tabular reports are coming up on this Thursday. So just basic listings of data, perhaps importing, exporting of data, using the field lists, using the click-ons and stuff like that. So that's what's coming up on Thursday, and then next month we'll have another beginning training on Wednesday, and then some more admin. We may have a nice surprise for this one. We may push out the GIS mapping one more month, because we have something else that I'll be telling you about today. It's kind of exciting. I'd like to challenge all of you to please do ask questions. It helps me keep focused on what people are looking for, and know that you're actually out there. In the past, you've seen me taunt some people now and then to get them to speak. So if you don't want to be taunted, speak up and ask questions, either audio or in the chat, and that'd be great. The links, by the way, for all of the meetings are here to get onto them. Again, if you don't have a link in your email. And hopefully once we have the videos, we will change the format of this a little bit to include both join a meeting and have the video recording from that meeting, starting with today's meeting. All right. So the format of these meetings. These training sessions are going to be up to 2 hours. We generally end just a little bit before the 2 hours. Sometimes we go over. I will lecture for up to an hour. Usually it's about 45 minutes, maybe an hour. I'll lecture, and then after that hour is up, I'll take questions that were related to whatever we talked about. So today it would be beginner type questions, things that we touch on during the training, or things that you felt were beginner, kind of you don't quite know how something works and we didn't cover it. We'll address those. After we've cleared all of those questions, we'll move ahead and take questions about anything, and we can have whatever type of conversation you'd like to have after all those questions have been answered. I will ask that if you have any stuff that, any requests that are specific to you that really nobody else doesn't directly relate to anybody else that's using the software, let's take those offline. Contact us after the training, and we'll we'll address them then by phone or by email, however you'd like. That would be great. Okay. Each time when we do one of these trainings, I need to pick some data in order to work with someone's configuration, and we have a lot of clients across the country, and everyone has a slightly different set of data, slightly different format of data, some vastly different, because we don't have any real standardization of data fields across the country. I know some of you know about Muck and Meyer. That's not reflected yet. A lot of agencies use Meyer as a standard or Muck as a standard for crash data reports, but we still don't have common databases and identical lookups. So, as each of you knows, as you use the software, the data looks like, or the program looks like it's addressing your data specifically. And that's a little bit of the magic that we do to configure the program. We see your fields, the values from your fields, and anything that's specific to you is in the program, but we have got the same program running with everybody's different data in it. So, all of that said, today we have picked, due to the overwhelming group coming from Oregon, and my desire to cover some state DOT. We've been very focused on cities for the last few meetings. We're going to use Oregon Region 1 data and configuration in order to do this training today. I also have access to one city. We've lined up Peoria, Arizona as a configuration to use today for local agency questions, and I may jump over there to do some of their reports if we have any questions that are specific to local agencies. I haven't played with that configuration recently, and so we'll hope that that's looking good when we get to it. All right. So I will be starting by talking about the login screen here, but before I get going, I will pause for a moment if anybody has any questions or you'd like to request them in the chat or vocally. Questions? All right. I'd request, right now we don't have anybody with any extra noise on the line, but if anybody, if anyone has your microphone not muted, it would be good to mute your microphone in case there's any background noise, and then unmute that when you're speaking. That'd be great. I have a question here about finding a user manual, and I'm actually going to add a line here to the stuff that we're going to work on today to make sure I show where the help is, because that's a great question, and I want to make sure I cover that. So we'll get to that in the first few minutes of this. All right, so I am going to log into our system here. This is our main login page. Yell at me if you can't see my screen. What you should see is a big burgundy screen with the Oregon Department of Transportation logo and a Region 1 logo. For those of you in Oregon, you should see your region, or you should see all the regions depending on which agency you're at. For anybody else, if you were using the system, the main thing to know is what you'll be starting with. Anytime you start to head to the program, this is where you want to head, governmenttools.com. And from governmenttools.com, you click on Crash Magic Hosted, and where you'll be sent is to our www.governmenttools.com CM, which is Crash Magic, login screen. This one is almost identical to that, except as you'll notice, it starts with demo. And that's because we use a slightly different server during presentations, so that when I mess up people's configurations and stuff like that, they don't affect anybody permanently. They're just on our demo server. All right. So when you go to log in, the first thing you'll want to do is look for your agency in here. So if you, for example, are Peoria, you want to select that. If you are with Chandler in Arizona, you'd select that, Louisiana, and so forth. And your logo should show up here. Feel free to let us know and send us a new logo if you've got an updated one that we're using an old one. As I mentioned today, we're going to do Oregon DOT Region 1. And incidentally, in case there's any questions there, Oregon DOT Region 1 actually has access to more data than just their one region, and so you may see data from other parts of Oregon. Region 1 is primarily the Portland area and the extended area around it. All right, so the login screen, you'll have a login given to you when you first receive the program, and if you have someone in your agency that's an admin for the program, which you will have at least one person, they can create logins for you. and so they will give you what your login is and your password. Typically, we'll give people the password ABC123 ! As their initial login, and then the very first thing you want to do is click over here to change your login. So you put in your password, ABC123 ! You click change, and you have an opportunity to change it. All right, so let's see what we've got here. I'm going to type in my password, which is not ABC123, and we'll click on Analysis. Analysis is the primary way to go into the program, and what you would see when you first come in, we're actually going to take a look at a help screen here. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to show you what a report looks like in the program. This is just an example of what the screen would look like when you're running it. You've selected some data to look at, and you've selected a report. And the reason I'm showing you this screen that I've just jumped into is I've also got a help screen, and that is this help screen. And I just want to walk you through what you're seeing on our screen. So what you're seeing here is main screen. We have a few sections. Up here we have our exit button. That's this doorway. This is when you're ready to leave the program and log out. This is your help button. And for the question about a manual, that's where we're going to find it in just a moment, and I'll show you what that looks like. We have the ability to change projects, which is our groups of studies, just sort of like a directory. And if you're an administrator, you'll have an administrator icon, and you'll be able to choose the administrator icon in order to access the configuration side of the program. You'll always see the words Crash Magic up at the top and the name of your current project up at the top. As the program runs, the main thing you'll be doing is you'll be querying for some data, and then you'll be running a report based on that data. And so that query for data is called a study, and it's a query with other information attached to it, and that's why we call it a study. So it's got the query, it's got some filter data, and so forth in it, and that's where you create these, is right here. You click on the new study, and you put in the criteria for your query. You select the type of query, and you put in your criteria. All right, then we have your reports, and in this box right here we have 6 report types. There's about to be 7, probably the end of this month there'll be a 7th report type. That'll be GIS pin maps, which I'll be showing off today, and you have access to them today, but they're not quite at the point where I'm ready to put them in as a standard report. And the types of reports we have up here are your high crash location lists, collision diagrams, tabular listings, charts, crosstabs, and something called layouts, which are PDF versions, PDF assemblies of different reports. And then we have something called custom reports, and we'll actually get to use some of those today because up in Region 1 they've created a number of custom reports for themselves, and so we'll take a look at those. Those are essentially these same reports, shortcuts into them, shortcuts to specific collision diagrams or specific listings, stuff like that. All right, in this section right here we have what is called the project tree, project study tree, and it contains all of the studies that are in this particular project. And so you'll see a study, and then you'll see a number of reports, and those reports are basically reports on what is in that study. So in this case you'd have a time of day report. Well, down here we're looking at an all data report, so all of 2010 we're looking at a time of day chart, and that's highlighted in blue to show you that that's current, and here's that chart. On the right hand side is the report display. And so each of the reports, when you select any of them, and in fact even the studies, when you select them, you'll have a blue tab and a green tab. The blue tab is the report, the green tab is the settings that go with that report. And so when you want to change the display of the report, not the data, but the display, you go to the settings. I can change the colors, I can change which fields I want to be looking at, I can change what the captions are, the font size, and so forth. That's all in the chart settings. The report itself is where you see the report. Down at the bottom, there's a number of buttons as well. These buttons are all specific to what you're looking at right now. While these buttons are for creating new content, new studies, new reports, all of these things down here are for acting on what you're currently looking at or modifying somewhat what you're currently looking at. So the first few buttons are study operators, so a filter, a category list, refresh button in the version we're running now and that you have. There's also in here an export button, export to a CSV or to Excel, to XML, stuff like that. As you move to the right, they become more specific to the actual report you're looking at. So the next couple of buttons are for printing, copying and pasting, creating templates for these reports, and we'll discuss those in a little bit. And then finally, with the chart that we're looking at, we can change the category list for that chart, so which field we're actually looking at and what bins we should have, and what type of chart, line chart, bar chart, pie chart, etc. Okay. Tanya, thank you for the reminder. I did start recording, but I know you were working hard creating those graphics for me for us to use, so you probably didn't hear when I announced it. Okay, so any questions about the main screen? And otherwise, I'll move on from there. I will move on. Okay, so again, this is that same screen we were just looking at. As I mentioned, each individual agency may have some options that aren't available to everybody, and you can create your own, in many cases, report templates, which will cause this list here to grow, and all the lists when you click on any of these buttons to grow. And you can customize those. Oh, a little notation here. Something that was requested some time ago, and we implemented it for 1 or 2 users, is now built into the program as a function anybody can take advantage of, and that is many of you now want to have a disclaimer related to the use of the data and the use of the output from the program. And that disclaimer, if you set it, is placed down here. And so every screen that you look at in the program will always say, I forget if these are called 409, someone can remind me if they'd like. There's a either state or federal code that indicates what statement you want to put in there that says that people who use the data need to understand that it has been manipulated a particular way and it's for a particular use and not for other uses. You can actually put whatever you'd like there, but that's the typical use for this piece of code. All right. So let's see what we've got here. I'm going to jump in here. We did the login screen. And now, when you log in for the first time, what you will see is the main project. So here's your main project, and this looks a whole lot less interesting than what we had a moment ago because we haven't selected anything yet. And so what I'm going to do is, on this screen, I have to create a study before I see anything else. If I haven't gathered any data, I can't make requests or reports. And so the very first thing I'm going to do is request a new study. And there's 2 places to do that. I can use the standard button up here, or we also have kind of a fancy button over here. What happens in this area actually is as you've run the program over time and you build a list of studies that you've worked on, this will list for you all of those studies. We've got a big old icon for every one that you've created, or the first top 10 or so, in order of when you last accessed them. So when you come back into the program and you want to see what you were working on, you can go to those studies. All right. This is where you would normally show up when you log into the program. I'd like to walk you through a few features in the program first, and then I'll start showing you how to gather your own data. So I'm going to start right now. I did want to mention help. So when you're in the program, you can click on your help button over here. And this brings you up the help navigator. And in the help navigator, you will have some specific help based on where you are in the program, all the way to very general help at the bottom. In addition, there is the PDF manual for the program. So to answer the question of where the manual is, number one, you can ask us for them, and we print them, I want to say, on demand. We don't typically print these days. We can also email you a link and so forth. But we have a link right here that you click on, and it's kind of a large manual. There's your manual. There's 400 pages worth of content describing all the parts of the program. I do recommend, if you're new to the program, going to the tutorial section. So I'm going to scroll down here to the tutorial section. Oh, maybe I've got some links up at the top that'll make that a little bit faster. So it's a table of contents and tutorial. If I click on tutorial, this is a nice walkthrough using the program, logging in, going to your project page, help program, everything we're covering right now, but in detail. So it'll tell you each of the steps, each click you want to make to use the program. I recommend going through the tutorial. I think it's about 20 pages, maybe 30 pages, just straight through to get familiar with the program. However, Once you're running the program, your best access to getting help is to click on help right at the closest spot you can get to what you want. And that's because if you're looking at a diagram, it'll say diagram right here. If you're looking at the diagram settings panel, it'll say diagram settings right there. And it'll give you the most accurate pointed help for what you're looking for. So what I did there was the manual. The other thing I can jump into is, let's say, the project panel. So here's our project panel help, and just jump straight into the manual. You can still navigate the rest of the manual. Jump into the home page, project settings page, user settings tab, and so forth from wherever you're dropped. But it's nice because it drops you in there initially. And this is a little bit easier to navigate, I find, in an interface like this than a simple PDF. Although the PDF does have, if you turn on the table of contents on the left, it will show you the same sort of stuff over here. But this lets you jump into each of the sections. Okay, let's close that. That is your help system. Now, I did prepare a few examples here, and I'm going to walk through those first, show you some of the output for the program, and then from there I will move in and go to the details of creating a study and how each of these would be created, each of these reports. Again, I'll pause. Any questions anybody would like me to answer? Looks like, Tanya, you've covered Minara's questions about importing data. So that's good. Anything else there? No, I think that's all of it. All right. And the question about importing data, I'm not reading the whole question and answer there, but we do have sessions talking about importing data. Importing data is something that is unique to each configuration, and what that means is different agencies will have different needs for that. So in Missouri, for example, you don't import data at all. Your data is automatically provided to the program through your database. In Oregon, it's handled automatically. Your data is sent to our servers nightly. And so we get updates of your data regularly. In Louisiana, that's I believe it's a semi-annual process, but that process can be as frequent as we want. In smaller agencies, frequently you download that data, you get some sample, you get some text files, or you get some XML files from either the state or from your police department, and you import those yourself manually. So each agency does something a little bit different, so we can handle that and talk with you directly about that. If you'd ever like, just contact us. All right, let us look here. We've gathered some data for a location called Stark, Southeast 122nd, and I'm just going to bring up the intersection diagram for that. And I will note, and I thought a little bit about whether I wanted to use Oregon's data for this, because Oregon has a slightly different case than everyone else. These schematics are going to look a little bit different than other people's, but as soon as I explain the difference, you can apply that to your use of the program. It'll be pretty straightforward. So the difference is that in Oregon, they use non-cardinal directions as well as north, south, east, and west. They also use northeast, southeast, southwest, and northeast directions of travel, and for that reason, legs of the diagram. If your data supports that, and if you trust that the direction is that accurate, and Oregon does clean their data very well, so as a result those directions are generally fairly accurate, then you can use this and you'll get diagrams, for example, that look like, this diagram, where we're actually not just looking at four legs, north, south, east, west. We've got a southeast and a northwest leg of the diagram. And so anyhow, when we're looking at Oregon data, our diagrams will look slightly different, but all the functionality is exactly the same. All right. So there is a collision diagram that yours will look quite a bit like, because I'm just looking right here at a four-leg intersection. All agencies, you still have access to things like T-intersections and route milepost if you have that sort of data, where you get a corridor's worth of data, and we'll be looking at some of that because we're looking at state data today. We'll have an opportunity to look at that. So the diagram in general will have a title on it. It will generally, and you can configure this, it'll generally show you the number of crashes and the filter name. It'll have a north arrow. For those people who've been using the software for a while, this north arrow is now configurable. We can point it in different directions, and so if you want to indicate that this was not actually north in this direction, it was north another, we can do that. I'll show you that in a moment in the settings. And we can also move the north arrow. If you have a custom schematic where that north arrow would be in the way, we can put the north arrow somewhere else. This is stuff that's new, September, October-ish. All right. Let's see what else we've got on the diagram. The curb lines, which is the part of this that is unique to Oregon, is this right here. It's just these lines right here, the gray area inside of it, the beige area inside of it. And they also have, in Oregon, slightly different rules about where to place the crashes. For everybody who's using the software other than Oregon, your crashes are placed based on direction of travel and distance and direction from the intersection. That's how we identify where the crashes occurred and where they should be placed in the diagram. In Oregon, they have specific areas, and they are numbered. And don't even correct me on this, you'll just know where they are. I believe they're numbered 1 for all crashes here, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. And as a result of having those numbers, we ignore the directions of travel when we're placing crashes for Oregon. This can be relevant to anybody who has data where you've already described in your data where crashes should be placed in the intersection. If you have that, contact us. We can create schematics that apply directly to your data, and we won't be sort of guessing where the crash happened or making good guesses as to where they happened. All right. Each of these crashes, these crash graphics, represent one crash, and they're generated at the time that the software generates the diagram. So as I click on the diagram and it renders the diagram, it makes each of these graphics. And what's important about that is if your data changes and you re-render the diagram or any of these reports, it will re-render that graphic. So if you, for example, change the direction of travel for one of these, the crash graphic is going to move to somewhere else if you suddenly have a head-on collision inside the intersection. Or if you make one of these a right turn or a left turn, you'll get a right turn or a left turn arrow associated with it. So they're rendered at runtime right at that moment. Very powerful because, again, you can edit your data, just refresh the diagram, and you're on your way. All right. At the bottom of the diagram is a legend. And this is also something new. We're actually able to configure this legend a little bit easier now for people when we've changed your configuration so it doesn't exactly match the legend that we normally ship to people. So these are standard symbols, these straight, stopped, unknown, backing, and so forth. Some of them are a little more custom. One's pedestrian symbol's been around for some time. We added to that a couple of circles to make it look like a bicycle. For longtime users of the program, this fatality used to look like a bullseye. It's now looking a little bit more solid, as we've wanted for some time, and so forth. So these are all different symbols that we can use in the program. All right. You'll notice when you're looking at this that we have a click on the right side. I'm actually going to mouse over one of these guys and click on it. And when I click on this, I get a list of the fields that are behind this crash that went into generating this crash graphic. And so it can give me, for example, the crash ID number. In your case, it may be called case ID or record number, accident ID, what have you. In many cases, if you're getting your data from a state agency, there'll be 2 such numbers. You'll have the one perhaps the state agency makes a unique number for the database, and you'll have another one that may be your agency local number. That's a very common thing if you're using state data. These fields, you can choose which ones to display. You can pick from any of the fields that are in your database, and for, again, old-time users of Intersection Magic, that used to be a limit of about 45 or 50 fields. There's no such limit anymore. There could be hundreds of fields in your database. So I'll just show you in this one. I can click on this item right here, this icon, lets you choose a field list. And you'll see it in other places in the program. It's useful for choosing field lists. So I'll click on that, and this allows me to choose from a shared one that everybody's got access to that lists these fields to a couple that I've created myself. I have one called Click on To, and I have one called Click on Copy, which is probably just a copy of that original Click on one. I'm going to choose Click on To and see if that changes anything we're looking at here. Yes, it does. Shows me a bit of extra information. Some of the stuff you're seeing here, and most of you have this in your configuration, if you have lat long information, or if you're a local agency that only has one city in your database, we've generally configured you with a Google Street View or a Google, Topo view. And if I click on that, I can get a larger view of that, showing the location that we're looking at. In Oregon, this is being done with lat long fields to identify the location. In local agencies, we geocode the location name that was entered when you put in the intersection in the study. All right, you can see these different fields are showing up now than what we're showing before. Okay, so some of the other options you have other than just click on is I can move crashes. So if a crash isn't placed where you want to show it, I can choose that tool, the move tool. I can move my mouse over the crash graphic, and sometimes you want to zoom in to do this. You'll notice as I move over it, it highlights itself, and if I click, I can drag it. Sometimes it's hard to grab it, and it's helpful to zoom in order to grab them more easily. Okay, if you do a lot of this sort of editing, I won't go into great detail here, but I will tell you if you find that these appear not to be where they were when you go to print, we've had this as a bug for a while and we believe we've resolved it. We occasionally hear from people that they're still having it. Always click on the report that you're looking at here before you go print. So if I'm looking at these three crashes and they're where I want them to be, wherever they are after you click on this button, that's where they're going to end up when you print. Okay, so they're in the right spot now, and now I go print, that's where they'll be. We've had occasion where when you drag them and then go directly to print, they don't stick. They end up somewhere else. So that's just a little trick to use. It's just this causes a save is what it does. As soon as you click on anything out here, you're saving what's in the current report. And that's another point. Generally, you won't see a save button as you make changes to the program. What you'll see is that the changes just take effect every time you click to somewhere else in the program. Everything will be saved. Another pause for questions. No questions. I'm feeling lonely out here. All right. So some other things you can do to this diagram. There's also a rotate tool. This allows you, if a crash was actually aligned differently than the way it is in the diagram, you can rotate that crash in 45-degree increments. And you can move those crashes as well after they've been rotated to where you want them to be. Finally, we had a request from the state of Nebraska. Do we have a Nebraska person here? Looking through my list. Yes, we have actually someone from Lincoln, Nebraska, a local agency in Nebraska. But the DOT put out an RFP that required that we be able to label individual crashes. You'll notice that in this diagram, every crash has the case number. Looks like it is the local agency number. It's not unique across the database, I can tell because they're so short. It has a case number attached to each crash graphic. We can choose to put any field or list of fields next to every crash graphic. But what Nebraska requested was that we be able to change a specific label for one crash. And so what this does is, yeah, that's not what that generally does. What this does is shows this is the crash or whatever text you've typed in just for that one crash. All the other crashes still maintain the rules for displaying labels. But that one crash gets a special label. All of these describe all of these modifications, enhancements to the program. You may want to clear them. You may want to move the crashes back to where they were or get rid of these label enhancements. That's done on the settings tab. So I'm going to zoom back out here. I'm going to go over to the diagram settings. And this is where you make most of the changes to the diagram, to the display of the diagram. And the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to reset my crash customizations. Okay, so I click on that. Do I want to put the crashes back where they were? Yes. This lets the program remove all of the changes you've done. Looks like we got something interesting going on there. All the changes that you've done. We're going to leave this configuration in a minute. I think we've seen this in Oregon and we've been trying to track down why that's been happening. All right, so all those crashes went back to where they were, and the labels went back to where they were supposed to be. All right. So those are the modifications you can do to a diagram. And your legend we've walked through the click-ons. A couple of other options when you want to choose a schematic. So let's go up to this one here. And we'll see about changing the schematic for this one. You'll see how this was selected originally. So this has a custom schematic. It's not just a four-leg intersection. And what I'm going to do is I can come down here to this schematic selector. And when I click on it, it gives me a list of all the available schematics in the system. And the current one that's selected is this int4 north, southeast, south, northwest. Now again, these are specific to Oregon, that they have this list of all these different types of schematics. And in other agencies, what you'll be looking at is these top list up here where you choose int4 or T intersection or corridor, perhaps with lanes and stuff like that. And each one of those lets you change the schematic to a different type of schematic. This is the right schematic for this location, so I'm going to actually leave that there. But choosing a different one allows you to see different configurations of intersections. All right. That is diagrams. And, oh, I'm sorry, one other thing that we do have that's fairly new, and I'm not sure if we have it on our demo server. I'll give it a shot. Give that a moment. What we have here is a list of export formats. And we had this as a request, actually from several agencies, but again, there was a Nebraska RFP that came out that requested that we make available the diagrams in different formats for exporting. And so you can now export all of our diagrams as in many different formats. That was JPEG. I can put these out as Adobe Illustrator, MicroStation, AutoCAD, DXF files from AutoCAD, and so forth. Some of these are raster formats, some of them are vector. When you grab a vector format, you can actually grab individual crashes and drag them about the diagram, if you like. All right. Let's see what we've got.
We've got a couple of questions, Pete.
Do we? Okay.
So when I was asking how to change the titles on the diagram.
Okay.
And then also someone was asking if you could put the traffic volumes on the diagram.
Good questions both. Let's do them in order. So to change the title up here, this title, is, as you'll see, is the same as what's in the tree over here. Now, on the screen, the title is going to be different if you've created a PDF layout for your diagram. So when you print these, what you'll always get as a default is the name of the study at the top. So I'm actually going to do that right now. Let's just print this one. Let's print, yeah, we'll print this one. This is going to print out as a default, so it's probably going to have the 4-leg without the angle. But let's just see what we get first. So when this opens up, give me an Acrobat. Okay. Sorry, I have a new version of Acrobat recently installed, and it looks like it wants me to go through an introduction. There we go. Okay. So when I do this as a printout, it's taking the study and putting the study name up here. So if what you're looking for is whenever you do a printout, you would like the study, you change the study name. That's what will be up there. And the date range will be here, and the number of crashes and the filter will be here. This is completely configurable. This is what's called a layout, and you could decide to put anything up here. You could put fixed text up here. You could put in the name that you have of the diagram here. You could put in literally anything in that spot, and it can be calculated as well. Our default, the way this program's set up by default, will always have the study name there. You'll notice the date range has been shortened. I believe the person who was asking this was Minar, and at one point Minar requested that we actually see start date, end date up there. What the program does is, if your start date and end date form an even year, January to December, we just put the year there. Or if it's multiple years, we just put the year dash the next year. If, on the other hand, the study is not in exactly a year or not exactly January to December, then we actually put the date range there. So you'll always get the details of what you've requested up there. It will just see summarized. He had asked at one point to have always show, even if it's January through December, you want to see that up there. And that's configurable as well. We set up some schematics for him to be able to do that. So the title up here is done that way. The title in the diagram is actually brought in directly from the settings. So whatever you type in here, you'll see updates on the tree over here, and therefore shows up in the diagram over here. So now it's got the word name on the end of that. So that's how you change the title here. Again, changing the title here, which is probably the more likely thing you want to do, is done by changing the study or creating a custom layout. Okay, volumes, tricky one for me. We've had volumes broke a while back, and we haven't had an opportunity to reintroduce volumes and therefore rates into the system. It has been on our list, and I apologize, we've had other things we've been working on, and so volumes and rates are not currently in the program. I'm going to say, because it's something it's been a very common request, that we should have it very soon, and I'll move it back up our list. In fact, what I'll do here is I'll ask Tanya to move it back up our list, because that way she bugs me about it. She's pretty good at that. However, if you want to just put straight text there, you can type in the text for that volume. You could put that as part of this title right here, or you could use it, you could change the layout so that the layout included that if you wanted to actually type in a volume for this particular location. And the last thing you can do, and this is a brand new feature, we're still making it a little bit cleaner than it is right now, but you can put any text anywhere on the diagram. And so what I'm going to do here is I'm going to click on this annotation here. This is toggle the annotation panel. So I'll make our click on go away. And what it allows me to do is I can click add here. And I'll say add a new annotation. And what happens is I now have an annotation. It's down in the lower corner. It's actually got no text in it. I'm going to modify it. I'll say here I am. And obviously what we'd rather see here is the ability to grab the text and move it around, but I'll show you that we can manipulate it. Here it says here I am down here. I'd like to be able to grab that and drag it. We'll get there soon. But what you can do is you can manipulate things like the angle, the opacity, the location, the size. So I'm going to change the size to 90 so we can all see it clearly, and I'm going to move it. I'll move it right up into the top right of the diagram. The diagram is 0, 0 sits down here, and 1,000 sits up here. So I'm going to move it to, let's say 600 across, and we'll set it to 900 up at the top. And you can put these in templates so that they are on every single diagram, and then you can just change whatever the text is that you want to show there. So I've just placed that text up there. That will now be preserved with this diagram, and if I save this diagram as a template, every time I load it, it will always have that ability. So that'll stay there, and that'll print with the diagram and so forth. Tanya, are there other questions, and can I put you on the spot to handle one of them? I want to take a quick moment for myself here. It'll just take about 30 seconds. Can you do that?
Sure, I can do that.
Just 30 seconds, thanks. Bye.
Manar, what was it that you were talking about? What did you want to export? If you can answer that, I can maybe, because Pete had talked about exporting diagrams already, but if you're talking about exporting data, you can do that as well. And you can also export reports. Okay, so he answered your question. Great. And then as far as how many crashes it can show without clustering the page, I forget what the limit is. If it's, I want to say 300 to 400 that it can put on a page. At some point it will tell you that there's just not enough space for, like if you tried to do a diagram with 500 plus crashes, I want to say, on it. And so that will get clustered. But you can always, if you feel like a diagram's clustered, you can always, you know, shorten the date range of your study, and that will give you less crashes on the screen. Otherwise, you can also try to change the settings. One of the diagram settings is changing the spacing in between crashes, so it can shrink them in a little bit more, and that will help with making it look too clustered. So hopefully that'll answer it a little bit.
Thank you, Tanya. I didn't hear the question, but I heard the answer going down, so I've just changed the spacing between the crashes for this particular diagram.
Do you remember what the limit is for how many crashes before you get the error message?
It's an intersection. I believe you can put up to 500 on the diagram, and then it'll tell you that's just too many to show on a diagram, and frankly, you've exceeded that when you hit 100. I think 100 or 200, it's going to start to look way too cluttered, but the program will let you put 500. If you're doing a corridor, I believe there's no limit. If you're doing a milepost corridor, I believe you'll find that there isn't any limit at all. We clear that. We assume that there will be a lot of crashes in a corridor.
Okay, and someone just asked if the symbols can be larger.
So that's an interesting question. The symbols as an entire graphic, well, I guess the simplest answer is generally not. As part of the configuration, when we prepare the configuration, we build the symbols and they can be scaled. Actually, no, it's the schematics there. The schematics decide the size of the symbols. So in this particular case, all of Oregon has slightly smaller symbols than the rest of everybody else, and that's because they have these special schematics. Every other agency, these symbols, are represented, I believe, at 0.6, the size of a normal symbol, and I believe most other agencies are all at 1. So this is 60% size for all of these crash graphics. If you're talking about individual symbols, again, they're scaled as part of the configuration as they're put together. I guess I'd like to get an example of what you're sort of looking for. Just says LADOT. Who have I got there? Is that someone I know? That's Louisiana, excuse me, not Los Angeles, I believe. Anyhow, if you contact us or if other people have that same question, give me an example of what you'd like to see. I do know that the reason why they are the size they are is to make sure we can fit a reasonable number of them on the diagram. And the reason Oregon's are smaller is because their road widths in the schematics are smaller in order to be able to accommodate these angle roadways. So that's why Oregon's are 60% size of all the graphics, and why everybody else's are not. But they can be changed. So if this sort of, oh, could you always make these larger, or we don't care, we'd like to be able to do intersections that only have 5 crashes, so we'd like them to be larger. We can prepare schematics like that. That's not a big challenge to do that. And so need to know, I guess, the specific use. Thanks, Jim. Contact us directly, shoot us an email or give us a phone call when we're not during a training, and we'll see if we can set you up with some schematics with different size graphics. All right, thank you for the questions. I'm telling you, we had some trainings in the past. I couldn't even tell if anybody was out there except when I asked where they were from. So I really appreciate these questions and comments back. All right. So I think we've covered the collision diagram. We did the export, we did this, great. All right, I'm going to roll forward. We spent quite a bit of time on the diagrams, and that's appropriate. I think many people are using the software for that purpose. But I do want to hit some of the other features of the program and make sure that you're able to access those, and then we got to look at the studies. So actually, you know what I'm going to do? I'm going to change my script here just a little bit. I'm going to jump to studies right now. I'm going to go see how Tanya did on one of the things I was looking to be able to provide. So I'm going to take a quick look at what I have here. And I'll bet she did a great job. I just don't see them up there. Okay. Oh, studies listing. She sent it to me directly. Let's see if I can open this. Not so much. All right, I'm going to go into the studies and show you how studies are created and what's in them, and then I'll describe to you. Hopefully, Tanya, if you could try to drop that file into the Dropbox folder, that would be great in the shared PD Magic. All right. So what we've been looking at so far have been reports sitting inside of a study. Right now we've been looking at these collision diagrams. As you can see, there's other types of report. We looked at the time of day a little while ago. They sit inside of a study. That's the context, that's the data that goes into this, and all of these are modified or changed every time the data changes or the request for data, the query here changes. So this particular study is actually what's called a case ID study, and I'm going to show you several types of studies in here now. All right, I've just clicked on the study. This is where you make changes to the data you're looking at, and I'm going to click on the settings for it because that's how you change the data that you're selecting. Now, everyone's screen will look roughly like this. What will change is what's down here at the bottom, and that's dependent on the type of study that you choose. And so what I have here in Oregon, I'm just going to show you what Oregon has, and then I'll show you some other examples. We have that document I was looking for. So in Oregon, they have a number of ways of gathering their data. Describing them in details beyond the scope of this training, and it's specific to Oregon, so I won't do that. But they have the ability to query by a street number and a milepost, by all data, by looking at all the crashes in the database. That's if you want to sort of do summaries, severity across the whole database, month of year across the whole database, that sort of thing. And you can limit it by date, but it doesn't limit by location. It's all locations in the database. We also have a crash ID list, which is what we're looking at here, and that's where you actually get to put a list of case IDs into a box and say, those are the crashes I want to see. Many state agencies are using this when they have their own system for gathering data and doing some analysis, but they wanted collision diagrams to match that. And so they actually have a script that, and this is being done, let me see if I can name a couple. I believe we're doing this in perhaps Nebraska, definitely Missouri is doing this. Help me out here. Oh, anybody who's using our ArcGIS plugin is also doing this, where what you do is you choose an area of the diagram or of your map, of your data, and you click a button that will then send this list of crash numbers to the program. It makes sure that the data that you see in our diagram matches what's in your system. So that's kind of a handy thing. It's also nice if you need to combine locations. This allows you to put data in here from this location and from this location that are studies in this list, and you can combine those. And therefore, if you have, for example, two street names that are both used for the same intersection, you can combine locations that way. That's common to everybody. Everybody should have that. If you don't have that, contact us. We need to just update your configuration to include it. Highway number and milepost. This is different than a street and milepost, and so that's another option that Oregon has. Intersection, and in this case, intersection by street numbers versus their names. Most everybody should have intersection as part of your configuration. I think Missouri will be the exception to that, again, because Missouri is sending us directly the crash numbers or the lat long coordinates for their data. So that's the only exception there. Lat long, if you select this, you get to choose the min-max XY coordinates for the crashes you want to show. And again, this can be automated. It's much better than trying to type in lat long coordinates. You can send this from ArcGIS or from another system. Another case ID list, and XY rectangle is very similar to lat long. Let's see if I've got what I was looking for over here. As I mentioned, everybody running the software has a different configuration unless you're using the same data source. So what I've got here, I've had Tanya put together some examples of different items that will appear in this list, right? So when I open this list up here for Oregon, that's what I get. But if I open this list up for St. Louis County in Missouri, this is their list. They have a case number list, they have a date range, intersection, and milepost. That's what they have available. In Arizona, you have case ID lists, date range, file number, because this is different than what the state records your crashes as, intersection, milepost, rectangle. You'll notice all these unrestricteds in here. In Arizona, agencies have the option in their configuration. This is pretty much every agency in Arizona that's using the software, about a dozen right now. They have the option of looking at just their jurisdiction or including all data that they've ever imported, and that allows you to capture border crashes, crashes on a roadway or an intersection that borders another agency. And if you've imported that other agency's data and you choose unrestricted for any of these studies, then you get all the data, not just your agency. Louisiana has another list of them, and they have something called a control section, and they can choose a control section and log mile to gather their data, as well as coordinates and the standard crash numbers, date range, intersection, and route mile point. Plano, Texas has address. This is one, I think I've got about 3 clients that use address as one of their main means of querying. 2 are here in Colorado and then Plano. And that's another way to gather. It's similar to a milepost, but it's typically whole numbers for addresses. Otherwise, those are fairly common. And in Nebraska, Nebraska has some of the standard ones. Accident keys is basically case ID list. These are all fairly standard, route, milepost. They also have something called accident location remark, and this is an interesting one. They have a field that is free form. The data entry clerk types in what the officer put in for the location, and it can quite literally say north of this street, near this street, on this highway, outside of this town. They can type all that in. What we've done is we've given them the ability to freeform search, to text search that, to look anywhere in that string of characters for any text. And that allows them to search this accident location remark field. So these are all different ways that people can gather their data, and that's why this screen would look a little bit different depending on who you are using the software. Wow, I am just, it's 11 o'clock already? Flying right along. We're gonna go into the first hour. We're going to start going into the second hour, still with some lecture before we get to questions, because I really do want to cover all this stuff. All right. So when you choose a study, you're given these different options. I'm going to make a copy of this study that I have here so that I can, actually we'll just make a brand new study. How about that? I'm going to click on New Study here. And when I click on New Study, I then go to the Study Settings tab to change whatever parameters I want to change. So the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to say I'm looking for an intersection. And so rather than seeing now that list of case numbers, it gives me the option to pick street names. So I'm actually going to go in here and I'm going to choose, only because I don't know the street names I could be choosing, I'm going to choose this Powell. Oh, this is tricky. We've got a lot of different ones in here. What we've done with state DOTs when they're using the software is because a given street could exist in different locations, we also include for them the county and or city that that street is in. And I'd have to know this area a whole lot better than I do. So here's what I'm going to do instead. I am going to log out, and I'm going to log into, as I promised earlier, take a look at the Peoria database. And we'll see how that works out. But that'll give us some data that doesn't have all of those extra parameters next to them. Oregon already knows what I'm talking about when they see that list. They know what they have to look for. All right, so I'm going to create a new study. Now this time, rather than going straight to an intersection, I'll show you what I can do here. I'm going to go to my study, and this is something that generally local agencies can make use of that is not as useful to larger agencies. I'm going to choose here 1/1/2016, and we'll go for 6 months here. Okay, so I've now typed in a date range. I've told it I want a date range study. And you'll notice over here there's a couple of dashes. If I mouse over those, it says here's the number of crashes in the query. Well, as you change the parameters, these values would change. It takes a while to query them, so we don't do that every single time. So I'm going to click on this button right here and ask it to update that. So in this particular case, 6 months in Peoria, I've got 1,260 crashes. And so what I'm going to do is look at one report we haven't looked at yet. This is typically, again, used by local agencies, which is a high crash location list by intersection. And I'll choose one that's got severity included in the list as well. So this now looks at all the intersection names and identifies the number of crashes at each location, puts them into a list, and gives me that list. Now I've got some names here I can use. So 75th Ave and Thunderbird is the one I'm going to go grab. So let's do what I was doing before. I'm going to create a new study. I'm going to copy this because you know I will forget it as soon as I start moving forward. Okay, click on New Study. And rather than choosing an all data, this date range, I'm going to choose an intersection now. Notice this list has changed. This is what everybody in Arizona would see as opposed to what someone in Oregon might see. So I choose intersection. I'm going to choose the same time period. I'll actually go up to September. I think they've got September crashes in their database at this point. And I'm going to type in 75th. There it goes, it finds all the ones that have 75 in them, and I was looking for 75th Ave. And I'll look here for cross streets. Thunderbird, I just typed THU, and it was Thunderbird Road that I had found, so I'm looking for Thunderbird Road and 75th Ave. And the same situation, if I want to see how many crashes there are, I don't have to do this, but if I want to, I can click on that button, and it'll count them up, and it'll say you're going to find 37 crashes at that location. From here, now that I have a study, I can save it. I can click over here and that'll cause it to update, but it'll save anywhere I click. I could exit the program. It'll save because of that click. I'm going to choose to do a collision diagram. So I'll click on the collision diagram and it'll grab those crashes, and it asks me, based on the report templates that I have, which one would you like? And the default one in most cases, you'll use this four-way intersection. In fact, there's a link up here to do that directly. I'm going to choose four-way intersection. And I get my collision diagram. And this should be more familiar to those of you not in Oregon as a template for a diagram, a schematic for a diagram. Same functionality. I can still click on the crash graphics, get a click on. I can still manipulate the diagram by moving the crash graphics, rotating, and so forth. This is a very basic click on. We can edit that if we like, as I showed you earlier. Okay, so it's important to show you how those studies work. Let's see if we can grab it if there's another study here that's useful to take a look at. Oh, I know. We'll do a case ID listing study because that's another useful one. That's the ones we were using in Oregon, but you didn't see any of those created. So I've already done a date range, and I've done an intersection. I'm going to do now, do we have, oh, we don't have multiple file numbers there. Is this just one or is this a whole bunch? Older version of a configuration. Newer versions of the configuration allow you to enter multiple ID numbers in there. And so we'll need to update this in order to enable that for the Arizona folks. We may have a slightly older configuration on the demo server as well. They may already have that in their main one. But I was looking there for a case ID list or a file number list, which would allow you to enter a whole list of those. All right, let's go back up here, and I'm going to go jump into some of the other report types, and I'll stay in Peoria for those report types as well. So here's my 75th Avenue and Thunderbird study, and what you'll notice, recall when we first logged in, all we had was the study button. Once you have a study created, then you'll see your available reports, and these are your available reports. So we've chosen diagram, we've already done a high crash location list. I'm going to do just a simple tabular listing. I'm going to click on our tabular list here, and I will select, we have a basic case ID, we have a basic listing and a detailed listing. I'll choose the basic listing. These are a couple of listings that were requested when we installed in Arizona to have these fields available, formatted in this order. And so this is a list of fields available to anybody who's using the software in Arizona. As I said, every agency, we build a case ID list or two for them so that you have access to some reports directly out of the box. But here's an example of changing that. So right now, I mentioned before when you see these lines, this icon that looks like this, I can select a different field list. Here are my current field lists. I can also create a new one. So I'm going to duplicate this field list. Say that's a nice field list, but I wanted something else in there, and I can click on Edit. And so when I choose Edit, here's where I get that list of several hundred fields that any given agency may have, depending on what's recorded by your police department, what's recorded by your Department of Revenue, etc., as data. Department of Revenue I mentioned because in Colorado, that's who holds the crash data. Go figure. So let's just grab another couple of fields here, and we'll look for, well, latitude, longitude. We can throw those in, see if there's data in there. Lighting condition. And we'll just throw those in. I'm going to put them just below just above violation. So I'll put them just underneath action by selecting action and clicking on the add field to selected field list. And so now I've added those 3 fields, latitude, lighting condition, and longitude. And actually I probably want latitude and longitude together, so I'm going to click here to move that field up. I can select a whole bunch of fields or just one field. And so let's look at that and lighting condition. All right, and I'll make that a little prettier. We'll say light condition there. And that's going to take up some space in the report. I want to make sure it's still a printable report, so I'm just going to grab, for example, my street name. Let's see, on, and do we have our cross street? No, but I'll get rid of our street name because we already know where we're at. So I'll pull that out of there. And it looks like we already had light here, but it was just light, not lighting condition spelled out, so I'm going to get rid of that one as well. All right, so I've just made a little bit of room in my list, and I'll save that and return it. So this is my new listing. And so I take that field list, specify that's what I want to see here, and that's now what we see in the data. So now I've got my latitude, longitude values here, and I've got my light condition that I added, and we've removed the street name that the crash occurred on because we know we're already at 75th and Thunderbird. So that's your basic tabular listing, and now that I've created that, I can regenerate that anywhere. So I could go to any other report, if I went to another location, and why don't we do that? I'm going to make another, let's get a couple of locations in there to make it available for us. I'm going back to my high crash location list, and if you recall last time, I copied this, I pasted it into my clipboard, I pasted it into a notepad over here so I could remember it, and then I went back to the study and I created a new study. That was all for demonstration. The other thing I can do is just select the ones that I want diagrams for, come down here, tell it the type of report, and I can do any of my report types, charts, diagrams, layouts, what have you, and I'm going to choose my 4-way intersection diagram and click this plus button. So what that's doing is it's creating that report for every one of these locations, and what it does to do that is, this is created 3, what it does there is it creates a new study with the same date range as the original high crash location list and any filters and so forth that were set, and then it generates those locations. So now I've got my 75th in Peoria, 75th in Grand, and my 91st in Grand. And the nice thing is, now that I've created that other listing, what I'm actually going to do, let's go to my basic listing here. Now I've got a modified basic listing, right, because I put my own field list in there. I can save this as a template. Now I'm not showing this for something for you to, I want to say learn. I'd like to just show you that this can be done. We can help you with it, or in an advanced session we can show you how you create templates. But I'm just going to create a template here that says my favorite listing. And just by doing that, creating that new template, I can now go to any of my studies, go to 75th and Grand that we just brought up, and say that was the field list that I wanted to see when I do my listing. So I click on my tabular listings here, and suddenly I've got my favorite listing available to me. And I don't have to go reselect the fields, do anything fancy to get this listing. I've now got that exact same format available to me for any location that I want. In fact, not only do I have that, let's take that a step further. So we were looking at our all data here, my high crash locations list. So here's my high crash locations, and you recall I was able to click on a bunch of these. And I told you I could choose a diagram. I can also choose my favorite listing. Now I'll click on that. And now all of the new ones that I create right now, I've created 4 new reports, all with my favorite listing in them. 84th and Bell. So the idea is that once you create those templates, they're reusable. And that's really powerful. To find someone in your department that sort of likes going through this sort of process of creating new reports, customizing the stuff, looking at the data, they know the data well, create the reports you're looking for, then everybody just has access to those reports. Really, really handy. All right. Looking at some charts, I'm going to click on a chart here. And again, I just have to have a study selected so that I can go choose a chart or any other report type, and I'll choose an existing chart. Let's choose a month of year. We should expect to see January to June in there. There's our January to June data. And I can, again, I have a similar functionality to the listings. I can change what I'm seeing as a field in here. Right now it's month of year. I can say let's choose a different category list. And again, remember the buttons to the right of all this stuff are typically specific to the report you're looking at, as opposed to all studies or just printing in general or the filter, stuff like that. So instead of using one of these, I'm actually going to say I want a different category list. Let's make a brand new category list, and I get to edit it. Now, in an advanced session, editing it might involve creating a bin for every condition that I want to put in my bar, in a bar chart. In a beginner session, all I'm going to do is click on this fill category list and go pick a field. Let's look at collision manner. So I've chosen collision manner. It filled in for me all of the possible values for collision manner, conditions for them, colors for them. I can go change them. I can say that head-ons, for example, should show up in red, and rear ends should show up in green, and then we'll save that. And so what I've just created is a collision manner category list to show in my chart. And now I've got a collision manner category list. I had a lot of rear ends there, had no head-ons, a couple of side swipes. That's your basic chart. Again, you always have settings, just like you have in the diagram, and you can jump over to the settings. And in this case, one major setting I'm going to change is this says show empty bins. That means even if there were no head-ons, we're still seeing a head-on bar. I don't want that. I want to say that if there's none of them, then I don't need to see that bar at all. I just need to see a bar for those that actually exist. And now I've got rear end, side swipe opposite direction. And those are the only types of values that were in here. Once again, for the sake of completeness, I'm going to go create myself a layout, or a template for this. And this is my favorite. It's not really necessarily bar. This is my favorite collision manner. And what this means, now that I've created that, is again, I can go up here, 75th and Grand, a totally different location, different study, and ask for a chart. And I've got my favorite collision manner. And again, can make that available to everybody out there that's on my configuration, that's using the same configuration as me. And this is now the very same chart with the very same rules. You'll notice that different bars are popping up here, but that's because what I told it was, don't show any empty bins, but you got to show me all the bins that have data in them. So this particular one had different bins populated, therefore it shows you those different bins. So it's just a template. That is charts. Jump in quickly with some crosstabs. And a crosstab is simply two categorical fields against each other. These are those category lists we just created. This is just a pair of them. And so now it looks at time of day versus the severity of the crash. And so in each of these cells, you'll see how many PDOs there were at 6 a.m., how many PDOs at 8 a.m., that there were a lot of PDOs at 3 o'clock, and so forth. Our last type, and I'm going to see if we have one of these cool ones already filled out, years versus type and severity. Not sure if this one's functional in our demo. Let's take a look. So this is a layout, and again, what layouts are a combination, or can be a combination of, this is just a simple one. This just includes a crosstab. Actually, it's a kind of interesting crosstab. You'll notice that this crosstab has two fields in it. It's got two sets of bins in it, and so it's got the type of collision, and in fact it's got type of collision or manner of collision with an other in there to group a whole bunch of the other types of collisions, and it's also got severity. And then going down the side we've got the year. What I was going to describe for a layout, it looks like I don't see one here. Let's see if I can make a quick layout for you, because these are really kind of nice to have. Definitely the subject, however, for a different training to be able to build lots of these. Actually, this may be a good one here. If I can just show you one, that'll be better than having to build one up for you. What's nice about these is you can standardize your reports, the reporting that you want to do. Okay, so this has got a field list in it. It's got a field list. At the bottom of the field list, it's got that very same crosstab, and it's got a collision diagram. So you can actually combine various report types within a single PDF. So I'll give you another example of that. What we had here was the main report was that listing, and the sub 1 down here was the crosstab. I'm going to change that crosstab. I'm going to say what we really want is a time of day chart in there. So we're going to do time of day, and we want the chart. Okay, this is a layout. Again, happy to walk you through it, by the way. I should let everybody know that. Anyone who looks at a feature in here that I'm showing, and I'm not going into detail on, and we say, yeah, we'll be covering that in 6 months. And you go, no, I want to see it now. Give us a call. Shoot us an email. Be happy to prepare information for you and or get online with you and show you how it's done. But here now we have our time of day chart next to that collision diagram. And you can put quite literally any of the reports in the program combined together. And that's called a layout. And again, once you've done that, you can push these back as templates the same way you saw me push the other templates back and be able to retrieve those, again, for any location just by clicking on that single layout. All right, let me see if I'm missing anything in here. I did want to show some pin maps, and then I'm almost going to be done. Let's see. So I do want to show you some pin maps. I'm going to log in, and this is why we don't have it as a standard feature yet, is because I'm going to log in to Region 1 again. I'm using Firefox for this. And that's, again, this is the reason why we haven't pushed this out and said, yeah, this is a fully supported report. This is something, if you go into Firefox, you can get this functionality. If you do it in Internet Explorer, we come close to it, but not exactly the same. So I'm going to show you what this looks like. So these are all studies that I've created. Thank you, Pam, for letting me say I created these studies. And I've got here a route milepost. I've got an all data, a whole bunch of data across the whole state, and I've got a particular intersection. So rather than creating in this scale, I'm going to click on this just so you can see the list of available reports. And this is a Region 1 thing because Region 1 at the DOT has created a number of reports for their users that they just want standard up here that everyone can just click on. We've also added to that the pin map report. So given this study, there's 7,000 crashes in there. This is a highway that's numbered 1. I do not believe this is Highway 1. Got an interesting way up there of identifying their highway numbers. And so this is highway, this is labeled as number 1, but as you'll see, I don't believe it's Highway 1 in the state. But what we're going to do here is get a pin map that shows all the crashes and actually represented as a heat map initially. So that is now a heat map showing all those crashes on that highway. And as I zoom in onto that heat map, I will eventually get down and see the individual pins. Whoops, as long as I keep zooming in. I'm using my mouse wheel for this. I could also use this plus button here. Mouse wheel's a little more accurate. There we go. And so now I've got my individual crashes on the roadways. This is using the lat-long coordinates that the state of Oregon has in their database. All right, so that's one highway. And if you had a single intersection that you had brought up and you just done a collision diagram, but you wanted to see where the actual crashes occurred at that location, you could create a pin map for those as well. And so this is a particular intersection. And doing these pin maps can be helpful to show, for example, that this actually happened, it's a sort of a divided road here, happened at an intersection that probably has the exact same name, but it's a little further away. And you may want to isolate one of those crashes or identify that crash. If I click on any of these crashes, I get the details about that crash, or if there's multiple crashes in that spot, there's 51 at that spot, I can get all those as well. All right. Here's the fun one. We'll let this one run. Just so that you understand the difference between the Internet Explorer and the Firefox versions of this, the reason why we've had to do that and haven't released it formally yet is that under Firefox we're able to produce a pin map, and under Internet Explorer it actually stops the browser from running properly. And so we have an error condition when we do that. So that's why I'm running this under Firefox. In Internet Explorer I can show the individual pins, but I can't show the heat maps. So this is a heat map showing the whole state, which is kind of neat. Oops.
So someone asked how you're creating the pin maps.
Right. In order, again, what I mentioned before is that these are the report types that we have available, and that we have added this as a report type specifically for some agencies. Let's say if you ask us right now, we'll prepare one of these as an example for you, giving you the caveat that we have this requirement that you use different browsers for different functionality. But what I will say is I believe by the end of, well, let's say somewhere January, February, we'll make this a formal icon in this list, so that everybody will have pin map as a type of map that they can generate. So the next month or so we'll have that, but anybody who's eager to have that, wants to put that out there right now and understand, receive a little spiel from us explaining what they need to do and what they can't do with it, we'll put this icon on the right-hand side in their custom reports for them. And so just contact us, shoot us an email, say this is what I'd like, and we'll get back with you. If you're a single city agency, we'll just do it for you. No big issue at all. State DOT, we're going to want to talk to the people that we've originally been working with at the DOT to make sure that they have that same understanding and that everybody's given that information. Sorry to make that sound almost legalese, but I just want to make sure that we don't have people running the program, finding a crash, being upset that it feels unstable. We don't like to have an unstable version of the program out, and that's what this would be. We can also do this per user, by the way. I can create one of these just for a single user, and just that user would be able to create these pin maps, and that would be a way to do that without having to, I guess, get the okay from higher-ups. Hopefully that answers your question. All right, let me see if I'm missing anything else from here. I don't think so. Two things I want to describe. One thing, very exciting. Let's see if I've got an example of this to show. I'm hoping I've got it down here. Oh, I don't. I thought I created a document to show this as a kind of cool thing. One of the things that we're working on right now, Pam, who's doing the GIS work, is also working on what we're referring to as dynamic schematics. And right now, when you get a schematic for an intersection, let me see if I can actually find one of these real quick for you, because picture's worth 1,000 words here. Let's see. Yeah, good. I'm just bringing up a mail here. Okay, so this is, that doesn't have all my information in it. Pam, do you recall if we have a single document or whether I just got the individual ones from you? I can't recall where I put that.
I believe they're multiple documents, yeah.
Okay, so let's grab the other of the multiples and see if we can show this off. The idea is that when you do a schematic right now, when you create a collision diagram, you're actually needing to pick a schematic that matches the intersection. So you look through our list of 4-leg intersections, 5-leg intersections, T intersections, and you find one that's closest as a representation. But as an example, if you had this, we wouldn't even be able to help you with it. But even something as simple as up here, if you did this collision diagram, you'd pretty much have to do a north, south, east, west, unless you're in Oregon, in which case you'd get one that's on a 45-degree angle. But you wouldn't get one that's really exactly aligned like this. What we've been working on is that this is the template for this schematic that will be used for this location once we have that feature implemented fully. And what's happening is we're generating this based on looking at the GIS and then doing some very tricky work to figure out where each of the crash areas should be placed, as all our schematics right now have been done manually. We're now trying to do that in an automated fashion. So the crashes will be placed in the appropriate locations on a schematic that actually matches what the GIS map shows. And really looking forward to having that running. Part of that project has involved a requirement that we geocode. We have geocoded data. And so for those of you that don't have geocoded data, or those of you whose geocoded data may not be accurate enough at the intersection, we've also built a geocoding routine. So we're going to be able to geocode crash databases based on street names, direction, and offset. Offset direction and distance from an intersection, and we'll be using that information or your own lat-long coordinates to place the crashes onto these new schematics. Really powerful. Will mean you'll never have to pick a schematic again if you don't want to. When you bring up a diagram, you'll simply get the location based on the location that you've selected. You'll get that location. That's exciting thing number one, and I'm not working on that one. Pam's doing the work on that one. Exciting thing number two, I don't think I have any pretty pictures for you here, but anybody who's used the program much at all will understand and appreciate this. When I'm looking at my data, let's grab this one right here, and perhaps what we'll do to simplify this is show you a listing, tabular report. All right, let's do a tabular report of collision movements for these crashes. That's going to be a long list, right? Not a long list. What have I done here? Okay, we'll do this one. So once you've gathered some data, you'll notice on each of these studies, there's a line here that also tells you the date range of the study. And then it tells you the filter name that's in use. We haven't talked much about filter names today, and the category list for colorizing any of the content. And what I'm going to do here, looks like I've grabbed a very large data set. Pam prepared this for me. She's probably over there laughing. Oh, why'd you choose that one? I'm going to apply a filter to this one, however. I'm going to say all I want to see in this data set is rear-end collisions, right? So I click on my filter, and I'm going to make a new filter here. What field is that one? Actually, let's do, yeah, fixed object. I don't remember what field name that was. I'm going to jump to a different location because it's going to be a little bit long if I keep doing this over and over for a large location. So when this is done, I'm going to jump down to a smaller one. The gist of this is, what we have is that filters to date, you have one filter per study. So when I want to filter on a location, I come in here and I choose a filter. This is actually, I can just use their filters. This is great. This is, Region 1 has created a bunch of filters here. So they have, for example, drug involved equals true. And I can filter on their data and get drug involved crashes. And when I do that, the study limits itself, and in fact, there's no drug involved crashes at this location, right? I can also change the filter, and I can say, well, I want F&A only. This is, looks like fatalities and injury level A. And that's the only thing I want to have in this query. Maybe a 0 here as well, we'll see. But as I move forward, there's one. So there's one in this particular study. That case number. I think what you'll find, if they've been building these queries the way I bet they have, we're going to find in here some that had to be combinations. Ooh, that's a real complicated one. No intersections, no daytime, intersection only, injury none, injury any. What they've had to do on some of these is combine filters that they'd really like to be able to say, I want fatalities, or I want some other criteria. I want fatalities at night. I want fatalities and drug involved. I want fatalities and not drug involved. And what you have to do when you do that now is edit the entire expression. So you have to write a new expression every time. Now, what I'm working on is a new way of generating reports in the program. we haven't come up with a name for it yet. It's going to be called something like Easy. But the idea is that right now, in order to create a report, I need to choose a study. I need to choose my data first. Then I go pick from the report templates I've got. And we're going to flip that around. We're going to let you come in and start with what report do you want. And based on the report you choose, you can then choose some data, and then you get the report right away. It essentially brings creating a report down to essentially 2 clicks instead of a bunch to create all the extra data that we require right now. And so in order to do that, one of the requests was that someone be able to just check, I want this distance from the intersection, I want fatalities only, or I want injuries and fatalities only, I want this, I want this, and I want this. And right now you can't do that. Right now you'd have to build a filter for every one of those conditions. What we're doing is we're making that such that you can now create what's called a filter group. And a filter group just shows, just like this box, only has check boxes for all the filters you want to include. So rather than having to pick just one of these, you can say I want this one, and this one, and this one, okay, and I'm on my way. So during the creation of this easy report, which we'll probably have out at the end of this month, I think pretty safe bet, this easy means of creating a new study and report, we'll also be introducing these filter groups so that that's all you have to do is choose, I want a collision diagram, this is the location, and then check off on the check boxes which filters you want to include. I want distance from intersection to be within 50 feet, and I want injuries only. So that's something that's being worked on right now. That's my project at the moment that I'm putting together. And so I'm looking forward to having that out. Incidentally, we have one very solid beta tester. If anyone out there would like to be a beta tester, has used the program sufficiently, and has a very big interest in filters, has played with filters, wants to manipulate filters, contact me. I'd like to have a beta tester or two to work on this while I'm in the very beginning stages of it. The filter groups were far from the beginning of it, but the new easy reports were just at the beginning of, and we needed these filters to work with that. All right, that is a new record for me, I think, going at a full hour and a half just to do a beginner training. Hopefully I didn't throw too much at you. Open for questions about what I covered or what I should have covered, what somebody would like to have seen covered, and we'll work on that and then move forward to any other questions anyone has. Now, this is the point at which people start disconnecting really fast. I just want to thank you all for hanging out, going through this training with us. I want to remind you that if you have questions that are specific to you, you didn't want to bring up, that you think of later, contact us. We do this sort of, maybe half-hour sessions with people all the time. When they have a question about how to do something, we can walk you through it. We can prepare reports for you. But we want to make sure you're comfortable using the program and that you have the reports that you need to run the program. So again, just in case you cut out at this point, not waiting for questions, thanks very much for showing up, and do contact us anytime. Again, our website is pdmagic.com, and you can go to the Contact Us link and find all different ways of reaching us. So now open for questions. What's the purpose of the like checkbox in the study settings? Lovely, lovely. Okay, and that's coming from the city of Mesa, Renee. So what she's asking about, let's see if we've got that capability right here. All right. So I'm going to actually remove this filter. We've got a filter set. I'm going to change it to clear, because I see 77 crashes, but only one of them showing up. Now I've got 77 crashes, all of them showing up. So when you're looking at this study panel, you'll notice that, you know what, apologize, I'm definitely jumping to a local agency for this because I'm not even sure how we're going to be handling this Multnomah, Portland and stuff in there. So that would be an experiment, so I want to just jump in here and we'll go back to Peoria where we were a little bit ago. And this is, of course, the same as what you would be seeing, Renee, in Mesa, same configuration. Already in use. Oh yeah, I'm in a different browser with that. Oh well. Goodbye. If anybody ever gets that message when you're logging in and it tells you that you're already logged in somewhere else, that just means you forgot to log out on your way out, and you have the option to close that session from wherever you are, or you can cancel and go back and close the session at your desktop. All right, let's get back in here again. So 83rd Ave in Union Hills. So for those people that know the SQL language, query language, this directly relates to that. We've implemented like as a function in the program as the SQL language. Now I'm going to describe what that means to the rest of you that are not familiar with that function, that syntax. So right now, as I query for intersection, during this time period, I had to pick a specific street name, right? So you recall as I was typing in, it found a specific street name. If I said AVB, there's nothing there, and when I go to do this, there's no value there. There's no crashes because there is no AVB in the database. Likewise, if I just said AV, there's no AV in the database. So I have to actually pick the exact street name. And if you've ever been punching into this dialog box and decided to type in your own name, you know, I'm sure that's what it's called. If it says no selection and there's nothing there, no sense even proceeding. You're going to get 0 crashes because we've chosen intersection and we haven't picked one of the valid street names. Okay. Well, what like does is like allows you to take a part of that. It's like a wild card. And so what I'm going to do is I'm going to say what I'd like to get here is 83rd, and at this point you lose the selections down here. It doesn't matter that you don't have any selections down there, but I'm saying here this is a wild card. Anything ahead of the 83 and anything after that RD is acceptable. And same thing with this. If I go to Union and I say anything before Union, anything after Hills is acceptable. Right now, nothing, right? Because I don't have that like chosen yet. It does not have any streets in the database called %83%. As soon as I click on like, it now stops complaining that those street names don't exist. That's what that pink box was. And now when I go and run this, I get 14 crashes because I'm finding all those crashes that happened that had the word 83rd in one of the streets and Union Hills in the other. And we can go take a look and see what that actually resulted in. Let's take a look at this listing and we'll perhaps modify it to include the street names so that we can see what street names we're getting. I think I'm actually just going to create a brand new one. I believe our names here are at, is that right? No. Definitely on. Oh, I'm wrong. Okay, so now I'm looking for anybody who can tell me in the Arizona config, what are our street name fields? We're talking primary? No. Oh, come now. Okay, tell you what we're going to do here. We've got our own names that we use internally for street names that we can use as well. Primary street. And I'll add another field here. When I click on this one, I'm actually able to enter my own expressions for fields, so I don't have to use the ones that are already in the list. Cross street. Okay, let's see what we get. Okay, so these look like they actually we got all of the same ones that we would have gotten for a regular query. So let's go cause that very same query to now incorporate extra crashes. So for example, maybe it's not Union Hills, maybe it's Union anything. Nope, database is kind of clean right here. How about 83? How specific do we have to be here? Okay, this is getting embarrassing. Okay, stop this. What we're looking for here is for something that's generic enough. Let's just see, just to make the point here, generic enough that we find other crashes at that location. Oh, that's taking a little longer. There we go. What I've done here is I've just asked for anything that has an H in it. And in fact, let's see if we can do things that just start with an H. Maybe we'll get a little bit of a shorter list. Oh, much shorter list. I'm going to run this one, and we'll show you what this means, because now what I've asked for is 83 to be in one of the street names and H to be in the other street name. When I go back to that same listing that we just had, it's no longer just Union Hills. It's also Thunderbird, which has an H in it, Washington, which has an H in it, Foothill, which has an H. I'm looking now for ones that I can use here that'll be similar as an example. So why would you use this? That's sort of probably a better question for all of this. Depending on where your data source is coming from, where your data, your crash record data comes from, you may have various different qualities of street names. In California, they have their data centrally coded up north. And when they code their crash data, we frequently get a lot of misspellings because the people who are coding it are not in the same agency as the people that are entering it, and so they don't necessarily get the right spelling. Well, if you have Thunderbird Road and Thunderbird Drive and Thunderbird Ave, and you know that your city only has one Thunderbird, you can do %Thunderbird%, and you'll get all of those. And that can be very handy. Also, if similar thing, if you have 83rd Ave and Road, and you know you've only got one of those, you can just look for 83rd and find all of those crashes. So that's the purpose of like, and there are a lot of uses for it. I mentioned before that we have in Nebraska, they have a field called accident remark, and that's a free-form field. Crash happened north of Joe's Bar on 63rd Ave near this town. Well, you could do a like for Joe's Bar, even though it's not a street name, it's in there, that string. And so you could literally do this, Joe's Bar, and you'd get all the crashes that occurred on 83rd with the word Joe's Bar somewhere in that string. That's the purpose of like. All right, other questions? All right, we're doing good.
I have one.
You have one. You can't do that.
Could you just briefly tell them how to do an easy filter so that they've at least seen?
Have you ever seen me do something briefly? I'll do my best. All right, quick filter example. So here I have 18 crashes at 91st and Grand. And what I'm going to do to make this most easy to see is I'm just going to create a listing here. Let's do a basic listing. Okay, so here's a listing of crashes, and some of these crashes are rear ends, some of these are left turns, some are side swipe, etc. Let's say that you just want one type of crash, and so you want to limit the list to just that type of crash. I'm going to click on the filter button, and I look in my filter list to see, do I have that type of crash shown here? And the answer is no, I don't. I've got some distance ones, and I've got a clear filter, but I don't have what I'm looking for. So I click on New, and I click on Edit Filter. I've created a new filter, it's got no name, and I go to edit it. And what I get is this screen that allows me to create a filter. And I can just free type into this if I wanted to, but the filter editor will help you create what you're looking for. So you look for the field in this box, and I'm looking for collision manner. And when I choose collision manner, it shows me all of the different collision manners available. So I can choose rear end, for example, and say add that to the expression that I've put up above. And I can ask for other types as well. Right? I could choose, for example, I want rear ends, and I also want, those are strange, and I also want left turns. Let's do single vehicle. That's another good one. I'll do single vehicle. And if I'm going to do single vehicle, I have to decide, do I want them to be both rear end and single vehicle, or do I want it to be either or? And the answer is it's got to be either or, because there isn't a crash out there that was both a single vehicle and a rear end collision. Those are mutually exclusive values in that field. So I add that one. So now it says collision manner equals rear end or collision manner equals single vehicle. And I save that. So you'll notice this list, remember we've got our rear ends, side swipes, left turns, and so forth. I'll say OK. And now you'll notice my collision types, so my list has been limited. My collision types are now only rear end and single vehicle in that list. Now, a good idea if you've done that is to name it, right? As soon as I've got a filter I'm sorry, that's my field list. Good idea is to name your filter. So I've got this untitled filter. If I click on the name of it right here, I can just rename it. So I'm going to say I want this to be rear end and single. Okay, so it's renamed it. And that does a couple things. One is it means that's what you'll see instead of the entire filter expression on your reports. And it also means now that you can use that elsewhere. So if I look at 75th and Cactus, and I've got 15 crashes there, and we'll go to my favorite listing there. So there's my listing, and I can just say, yeah, I want to filter that data, rear end and single vehicle. And now I have access to that anywhere I need it. Okay, and so you can build a whole collection of these. I will add again that everything that we're doing in here right now, whenever as a user, as an analyst, we create new resources, they all end up in our personal account. The shared account is managed by the administrator at your organization, and each of you has one or more of those people who are designated as administrators. Those administrators can move things from personal to shared so that the entire group of people logging in at your agency can access them. In the case of California, Arizona, help me here, Colorado very soon, Oregon, and probably a few others I'm not thinking of, you're all sharing a configuration, which means not only can you have some of these things moved to your organization, so Region 1 can share stuff, or Region 2 can all share their stuff with each other, or in Arizona, Mesa can create stuff and they can share it all amongst themselves. You can actually contact PD Programming and we can move things to the higher level configuration, the Arizona Alice configuration or the Oregon DOT configuration, which would mean that every agency sharing that configuration can use that same report. So if you want to standardize like that, you provide us an example or you provide us the template that you want and we can share that template. Okay, and the negative sign is south and west. Oh, in Arizona, you've got, I have a question here from Minar, and Minar, you're asking about the distance field. And I think, let's see if we've got this here. So this value right here, and we do this for most of our clients, so this doesn't just apply to Arizona, but the specifics I'm going to give apply to Arizona. This field in Arizona indicates the distance from the nearest intersection. And it can be given in feet, it can be given in miles, and they do an interesting thing. Negative means, oh, I think it's left of the intersection or south of the intersection, and positive means it's north of the intersection or east of the intersection. I don't even keep track of it anymore. And as a result, we have to do some pretty tricky work to figure out where some of these crashes are occurring as a result of that. Now, they've recently added a field to their database that tells the direction from the intersection, but it's not in all the data. And the distance field, of course, has to be calculated. Well, what we have added to the program, and this is absolutely everybody has this in their system. Let's see, let's edit this field list. When we provide you with the software, in addition to your own fields, and that's what's in this green list right here, these are the fields that came straight out of your database. Interpreting them, we can help you, but your best resource is the people who provided you the data. But in addition to that, we've had to interpret some of the fields very carefully to figure them out. And we put those calculations in something called pDefault and p2default. And I'm just going to select pDefault because inside of pDefault, we calculate the distance from the intersection, always in feet. And so anybody who ever wants distance from intersection in feet, when your fields from your agency include feet or miles, and then there's an indicator for it, or maybe they're multiplied out or they have different syntax in them, just throw in the distance from intersection field. You can call it whatever you like, dist in feet. And that's a new field now that I've put into a column right here. And that is now your distance in feet. So we've taken off the negative sign and applied that to the direction from intersection. We've got a direction field as well. And then we've got the distance always in feet for all of these. Okay. Great. Okay, that's the last of the questions in the chat right now. Still going for more. Anybody else have some more questions? I know you're all thinking because you're all there, so you're going to come up with something to stump me before I go. Minar is my inspiration for creating this new feature of a simpler version of creating new reports. I completely recognize I have quite a number of users who are going to really appreciate this new feature, the idea that you don't have to learn what a study is, create a study, learn what a report is, create a report, and build this whole tree on the left. The new interface is basically a single screen. It says what kind of report should be on this screen, what filter, what criteria for gathering the data, and show me the report. There won't be multiple reports. You'll have access to get back into our system, but the default action when you're on the easy form will be just simply one thing happening at a time, and there'll only be one or two options on any given screen, and so it'll be very straightforward. And Minar has just commented, if you're not noticing the chat, it looks very simple listening to me, and I can fully appreciate that. Much easier to watch someone else do this than to have had to wade through it yourself and see what those are. And so anyhow, I recognize that, and I'm really looking forward to the end of the month releasing this easy version that it takes away a lot of the immediate options that you have. You create a basic report, and then to get the more advanced options, you have to go into settings for that. But it makes it much easier to create the initial report. So hopefully Minar is looking forward to that as well. Other questions? All right. Hearing no others, I'm going to remember to stop the recording, which I think we've actually succeeded in making a decent recording for a session, and we'll put that out there as soon as I figure out how to on our website. And if we didn't cover anything that you needed, by all means contact us. Favorite is email. We like email because we can give nice detailed examples, but if you really need some help, we're happy to go online with you and do some remote sessions just like this, either on our screen or on yours. So thank you very much. Have a wonderful, what's today, Wednesday? Oh, and consider if you want to, coming back tomorrow, to look at more about these tabular listings and different things you can do with them. A little more customization and more general discussion. Have a great Wednesday. Happy New Year, everybody. Goodbye.